All right, let's look at some signs of infection. Notice it says signs of infection and not symptoms of infection. All right, so we're kind of on the outside looking objectively at an individual. So something that we can definitely test for um, is looking at their blood and seeing, okay, what evidence do we have here? So signs of infection could be leukocytosis, which is an increase in white blood cell levels. So typically when you do have an infection, your white blood cell count may go up because your body is gearing up for a fight and it's getting all the fighters ready. So having an increased white blood cell level count tells you that there's an infection. Or you could go the opposite with a leukopenia, whereas there's a decrease in white blood cell levels. So this is kind of the war is being waged and your white blood cells are being killed off by the invaders, by the pathogens, and that's causing a decrease in your white blood cell count. So anything kind of out of the abnormal range can tell you that an infection is going on. Now, I want to jump down to bacteremia or viremia. So this refers to either bacteria or viruses. So bacteremia referring to bacteria, viremia referring to viruses. So this is showing that these agents are present in the blood, but it says that they're not multiplying. So it's just the presence of them in the blood. So we can detect that they are there. We don't know that they're multiplying, but we know that they are there. And this could be from something very simple, like you were flossing your teeth and you got, your gums started to bleed and some of the bacteria from your mouth are now in your blood. It doesn't mean that they're multiplying. It doesn't mean that you necessarily have an infection going on. It's just that they are present there. Now, bacteremia or viremia can lead to septicemia. So this is the case where they are multiplying in the blood and then they are present in large numbers. So they are increasing. It's not just this incidental one little thing got into your blood and your immune system was able to take care of it. These guys are working towards an infection, and that would be your septicemia when you've got them in large numbers and they are multiplying in the blood. Now, step 5, vacating the host. So we had the entry into the host, and now we need to get out of the host. So we need to be transmitting this pathogen to a new host. So sometimes the symptoms that a pathogen generates helps to facilitate transmission to others. So when we talk about some of our worms, such as the pinworm, pinworms generate itchiness around the outside of the anus because the worm is coming out to deposit eggs around the outside of the anus, and that causes kind of this tickling sensation, and so the individual then wants to scratch that area. So typically this is in young children and young kids. They don't care. They're just going to, they got an itch, they're going to scratch it. And a lot of times young kids, they're not washing their hands very well, and so that's going to lead to the spread of the eggs to other areas. So the pinworm eggs then attach to the fingers and the kids touch other things and the eggs just get everywhere, and other individuals can then come in contact with those eggs. Cold and influenza viruses often cause sneezing and coughing, and that can expel these pathogens and make it easy for them to be inhaled by a new host. And sometimes it's the lack of symptoms or even signs that favor transmission. And this occurs in HIV, where many individuals may not show any symptoms at all for, maybe 10 years. And so they could be potentially spreading the disease because they have no obvious signs or symptoms of it. But any route a pathogen uses to exit its host is a portal of exit. So it can be feces, urine, bodily fluids such as blood, fluids that drain from wounds, vomit, saliva, mucus, semen. They're all routes that a pathogen can use to exit the host. And the portal of entry used by a pathogen a lot of times is often the same as the portal of exit. But of course, there's exceptions to that. Now, two more terms to talk about: latency and sequela. So when we're talking about infections, we can describe a latent infection. So this is when the microbes go dormant. And we see this in some chronic infections. We said chronic infections were long-term infections. So the microbes may become dormant and they can be reactivated later on. So we see this with chickenpox and shingles, that the virus becomes latent and can be reactivated later on in life. Sequelae is, as I said, long-term or permanent damage to tissues or organs. And we're talking specifically about infectious diseases and their long-term damage that can occur to tissues or organs. So there are such things like a strep throat, reoccurrence of that and the severity of it can cause rheumatic heart disease. Lyme's disease can lead to arthritis. Polio obviously leads to paralysis. So these are kind of the long-term or permanent damage that can happen from infectious diseases that individuals will then have to live with for the remainder of their life from that infection.